So anyway, who's right? Passionate about their color, Black men and women feel rejected by the opposite sex of their race and accuse each other of preferring white partners. Again, this article is by Sandra Ventura. Since the world is a world, men and women differ on several aspects. In chemistry between the two sexes, such differences are an extra spice. And if attraction were not the basis on so many questions, certainly some impasses would never be discussed. In the case of Blacks, one of the themes that provoke the most heated discussions is the rejection by partners of the same color, which grows proportionately at the social cultural level. According to the study Racismo Cordial, meaning cordial racism, carried out by Datafolha in June 1995, 35% of Blacks with only a primary education had never had an intimate relationship with a partner of a different color. However, the percentage drops to 22% when respondents have completed high school and drops to 8% among university students. This means that the higher the level of education of Blacks, the more they date and marry whites or partners of other ethnicities, neglecting the relationship with people of the same race. This statement, however, is countered by these same men and women. While they say that successful Black women prefer white men, women go further. They claim that black men only look at blondes and that Black women are always at the bottom of the male preference scale behind white and mixed race women. As the debate ignites the hearts of both parties, we try to find out who is right in this story. Some Blacks use the embranquecimento or whitening strategy. Lightening his descendants, he lightens his own life, becoming less surrounded by others. This is a comment by Aurelio do Nascimento, a sociologist, on marriage with white partners. According to sociologist Aurelio Eduardo do Nascimento, co-author of the book Trabalho, Historia e Tendências, published by Editora Ática, the result of the research proceeds, although it is not possible to declare the trend pointed out by the study as a truth. It is a detectable behavior because when the Black person ascends economically, he belongs to the world of whites, which historically was not made for him or her. According to Nascimento, racism does not disappear with social ascension. And for this reason, Blacks use the whitening strategy. By lightening his offspring, the Black man lightens his own white. By lightening his offspring, the Black man lightens his own life, becoming less surrounded by the others, he says. So what he's saying here is basically Black people, when they ascend socially, they're going to go into a world that's almost exclusively white. You're just not going to see other Black people in the circles that they run. And, you know, I think for some ways, in some ways, this is almost like an excuse. I mean, you can see it being legitimate on the one hand, because who you're going to marry people who are most, you know, people who are in your social circle. But at the same time, it just seems to me, I could be wrong. Until I find the answer that I'm looking for, I'm not going to say that my conclusion is, you know, actually just 100% true. But it just seems that people have been indoctrinated with pursuing white partners for so long. To me, it doesn't seem like it would matter whether they're surrounded by Black or white people, because in the end, we know we know what type of partner they're looking for. The relationship of the rich Black or Black university student with white women generally involves another issue: the difference in cultural status. It's very difficult for Blacks to pierce the schema of the white elite and marry a woman of the same social and intellectual level, believes the sociologist, for whom the majority of Blacks marry white women of inferior education. According to the professional, it is a two-way ascension, whitening for Blacks and changing the social level for her. Usually, the less favored classes accept more miscegenation, which makes things easier, explains Nascimento. Now, in a previous video, I showed this exact thing that he's talking about, where a Black man, the daughter of an interracial couple whose father was Black, spoke about how her mother was basically illiterate. I don't think she went very far in school. She was poor, but she had white skin. So she was able to marry this well-to-do Black man who had an education and he had money. So this trade that he's talking about, you know, in the previous comment says, okay, even though my color is a quote unquote stigma, I can marry this white woman who's of a lower class than me, but racially she's above me because we're talking about a racial hierarchy that exists in Brazil. So we see this a lot, even when you have a lot of men uh, who have a certain social status, be middle class, solidly middle class, and even then they'll come across blockades to marrying a white woman of the same social class. He'll often reach down and pull a white woman from the lower class, right? Anyway, this is one of the main complaints brought by Black women who consult with psychologist Sylvia de Souza and Ana Maria Silva from the group AMA, which works on the racial issue. They complain that Black men prefer white women, even if they are just cleaning ladies, over Black women with the same social cultural level, informs Sylvia. In the opinion of Ana Maria, from the moment that Black men, from the moment that Black men or Black women come in contact with negative stereotypes of their race, both can be led to reinforce a negative image of themselves and of everyone who has characteristics just like theirs. In this case, they will not look for someone similar as they tend to project everything negative that they see in themselves. Point well made. It's like, if you don't like what you see in the mirror, why would you go after a person who looks similar to you? For Ana Maria, it is not at all easy to come face to face with an equal that evokes a pejorative image when what you want is to forget your origin. For this reason, warns Sylvia, these same Black men and women must question themselves on some points when they meet the opposite sex. Some of these questions, some of these points would be, what feelings does this person provoke in me? What I see in him or her that causes me disgust? Why don't I see myself as a partner of that person? What images do I make of this relationship? What is the sensation that this person's touch causes me? When answering some of these questions, the person begins to have clues to the feelings that the opposite causes, explains Sylvia. The answers also serve to indicate the degree of whitening of the individual, since those who do not reflect on their own condition and relationship or in relation to themselves and the world tend to accept the distorted image transmitted by the white society. Another point is that the advertising world imposes a white model of beauty internalized by Black men and women, warns the professional. Placing all of these ingredients in the cauldron and adding a pinch of low self-esteem common to most Blacks, it leads to the rejection of the partner from the same ethnic group. Now, this is an intriguing point because in this article, the person speaking talks about the advertising world, which imposes a white model of beauty. When I first started going to Brazil, I noticed this, that everywhere you went, whether you talk about magazine stands or you talk about some of the huge outdoor billboards, you never, or just very, very rarely, saw Black people featured prominently on magazine covers. It would be like all white people. I remember flying into Sao Paulo and seeing these enormous billboards of, say, like Gisele Bündchen, they pronounce it, or other just white models, right? What does this promotion of whiteness, how does it affect the mind when people are constantly taught that how they look is not beautiful because they are Black? But this is something you'll still notice to this day, even though some people will say this has changed a little bit. Maybe that's true to a point. But Brazil's advertising industry continues to value whiteness. What else we have here? In Brazilian advertising, more than 90% of the protagonists continue to be white. Some people would say, or some people in the advertising industry would say, advertising and race, how they, what they're saying, well, how come they don't put more Black people on the covers? Their fear is that white women won't buy a product if the girl in the ad is Black. Now, this is an intriguing point because I once knew this director of this advertising company in Sao Paulo. He was a Black director. And he told me how working with certain clients, they would openly tell him after his company would create an ad for their company, and there'd be a couple Black people in the picture, and they would openly just point to the Black person in the advertising and be like, take him out, take her out, take her out. It was just like they would be blatant about it. So this is something that we see, and it continues to happen in Brazil today. You just don't see the media and advertising world just reinforces this white superiority, if you will. Like, this is the standard that we use in Brazil. Whenever you see a pretty Black girl, you think that she's gonna flirt with a rich white guy, says this musician and voice overdub actor. So again, we can see this whole thing going back and forth, one side pointing to the other. As social pressure is a harsh reality, Blacks end up falling into the trap. However, while Black men are more concerned with seeking social acceptance, women are looking for happiness, according to the psychologist. For women, the social aspect is not always related to the financial aspect, says Ana Maria. Sociologist Aurelio Nascimento suggests one of the reasons that puts Black women at a disadvantage. Men still have positive discrimination about their sexual performance and sensuality, like the mestizo or mixed woman, while Black women are left over. This is something that I pointed out before, the difference between, even though quote unquote brown or mixed race women are considered by many people to be Black also, when it comes to dating and marriage, even though in most social economic statistics, Black and brown women are pretty much in the same boat, um, mirror statistics show that the lighter skin or closer proximity to a white beauty ideal, uh, it brings more possibility of getting married at an earlier age for light brown mixed women, or what we call pardas or mulatas or morenas or whatever you want to call them, people who are a little bit closer to the white ideal and still be people of color, right? Anyway, so this is a picture of the very famous actress Zizé Mota. She's been in the business, I'd say probably about 40 or 50 years. She once told a story about how the actor that she's in this scene in this picture with. Let me just get into that because I think it's going to talk about this in this. Maybe it will, maybe it not. If it doesn't come up, I'll definitely talk about it. But this is an intriguing picture because it was taken from a novella, the ever popular Brazilian soap operas. Married 4 times, each of them with a different ethnic type. Actress Zizé Mota, 53 years old, that's at the time of the 1997 article, is wagering on the standard of beauty as responsible for strengthening the rejection. People end up believing that miscegenation can solve everything, and they play the wrong game. A carioca, meaning she's a native of Rio de Janeiro, she grew up in the south zone of Rio de Janeiro, mixed with people of all colors. Perhaps because of this, she never passed over, she never felt passed over due to her skin tone. Whenever I wanted a man, I never thought if he would care about my color. Despite not having had difficulties in the area of love, the actress has heard many complaints from other women about the rejection. I often say that we cannot forget the emotion. When it exists, everything disappears, she advises. Now, the one thing I want to point out about this picture is that it's taken from a novella. If I'm not mistaken, it was from the 80s. And Zizé Mota, I guess the actress on the right was very popular with, he had a lot of female fans, and people they were openly racist, just talking about how disgusted they were seeing him in these love scenes with Zizé Mota, right? It's like, okay, Brazil says we don't have these type of problems, but this is just yet another example. You wouldn't expect to hear these type of comments coming from people in a country that considers itself a racial democracy. We're all mixed. You know, it just once again it goes to show, just because you're willing to lay down with a person of a different color does not mean you are automatically not racist. Okay, this is a actor Eduardo Silva. Let's get his take on this. Eduardo Silva, 33 years old, Bongo, a character he played from the children's program Castelo Rá of the TV Cultura television network. He agrees with Zizé in the emotional chapter and warns of another fact. If you spend your life surrounded by whites like me, with whom are you going to relate to? Dating a white girl at the moment, Eduardo claims he was never prejudiced in this regard. The supporters of this thesis have nothing. I like pretty girls regardless of race. But Black women are right to complain, he says. The actor, also a professor of molecular biology in a pre-university course in Sao Paulo, makes the statement based on his experience with students, mostly white, middle class, and full of prejudices. There is a certain folklore about this history. I don't know if it's racism, fear, or what, but whenever we see a beautiful Black woman, we soon think that she's only going to flirt with a rich white man, believes musician and voice dubber Josias Damasceno. He's a single man of 41 years old. Aiming at himself, who prefers quote unquote mestizas, or women of mixed race, Black women, or morenas, Josias says that the rich Black man wants to have a model woman, but there is no standard of beauty for our race. That statement itself, I think, deserves a deeper analysis because the standard of beauty in Brazil, regardless of what people say, when you see white women everywhere, billboards, magazine covers, when you see them as the leading roles in most of the novellas, then we see a clear standard of what people consider to be beautiful. So it remains to be seen. He says, but there is no standard of beauty for our race because I believe that in essence, Black Brazilians have all been indoctrinated by this whiteness. Now, I think that's true across the African diaspora, wherever you go, you Dominican Republic, Colombia, Venezuela, and even in the United States, this is also true. We have been brainwashed, and we look at whiteness as a sort of standard, even behind the Black fist and the Black power. And I'm so proud to be Black. I still believe that Black communities across the Americas still have this deep down adoration of whiteness. Is something that has been taught and instilled in us since the time we arrived in the country. Um, well, I'm speaking specifically of what we call the slave trade because there are more and more studies that show that there were actually, a lot of Black people in the Americas before, other Africans were brought in on slave ships. But that's not something I'm going to get into here. Feel free to do your own research.